If you've been watching cable news or following Twitter, you know that 2014 was a big year for protest. But if you've been reading history, you know that this year's protests pale in comparison to many other years. In fact, as far as protest goes, 2014 reminded us of how badly some recent movements have failed. No question, 2014 had its share of protests. There were demonstrations against police killings of black men in Ferguson, Missouri, and on Staten Island. There were protests to demand democracy in Hong Kong and Ukraine, protests over the fate of 43 missing students in Mexico, and protests against an internet tax in Hungary. But 2014 was no 1968, when demonstrators fought cops at the Democratic Convention in Chicago. It was no 1989, when the Berlin Wall came down and Tiananmen Square became a battleground. It wasn't even 2011, the year of the Arab Spring uprisings and Occupy Wall Street. 2014 was a year when it became apparent how futile protest can be. Take the Arab Spring. In Egypt, a stacked election consolidated the military's hold, and criminal charges against the former dictator Hosni Mubarak were dropped. This was also the year when the Islamic State declared a global caliphate and took over half of Iraq under its control. In Libya, the feel-good story of 2011 is becoming a failed state. The Arab Spring has turned into winter. Or consider the Occupy movement. Its old targets seem to be doing fine. This year's midterm elections gave the Republicans control of Congress, and the House even rolled back a rule regulating the financial instrument at the center of the 2008 financial crisis. I don't think that's what Occupy had in mind. The problem is that some people get carried away with the power of social media to spread the word and gather a crowd. They forget that real change comes from things like reading through endless legislative drafts and sitting through endless legal proceedings. Protesting is exciting. What follows is boring. It's also what matters. I'm Rick Hampson, USA Today.